Bring it on indeed. Right, let's get into a couple of news items to cut some out earlier because of the increase in the intel that will be coming up later on. Google, go Ogle, Apple and Facebook-owned Instagram are enabling an illegal online slave market by providing and approving apps used for the buying and selling of domestic workers in the Gulf, according to the BBC Arabic's undercover investigation, which exposes app users in Kuwait breaking local and international laws on modern slavery, including a woman offering a child for sale. Now, the discovery of Fatou in Kuwait City, her rescue and journey back home to Guinea, West Africa, is at the heart of this investigation into Silicon Valley's online slave market. Oops. Where have we heard about Silicon Valley recently? From Russia with Love 7. It's all connected. After being alerted to the issue, Facebook said it had banned one of the hashtags involved and taken down 703 accounts from Instagram. And Go Ogle and Apple said they were working with app developers to prevent illegal activity. I guess they will need to look inside their own businesses first then. Delhi, India next. 5 million masks, oh my, are being distributed at schools in India's capital after pollution made the air so toxic officials were forced to declare a public health emergency. And a Supreme Court mandated panel imposed several restrictions on the city and also 2 neighbouring states as the air quality deteriorated to severe levels. Now, all construction has been halted there for a week and fireworks have been banned. And the city schools have also been closed until at least next Tuesday. Now, Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal said Delhi had been turned into a gas chamber. Interesting reference. It won't be the first of similar references to World War II. And he said the masks are being handed out to students and their parents. And he asked people to use them as much as possible. Now, the levels of tiny particulate matter known as PM2.5 that enters deep into the lungs are 533 micrograms per cubic meter in the city. Now, the World Health Organization recommends that the PM2.5 levels should not be more than 25 micrograms per cubic meter on average in 24 hours, when it's 533 currently. More sacrifices to Vishnu and Shiva, it seems. And no, I'm not joking. US President Donald Trump has announced this week he will make Florida his permanent home instead of the Trump Tower in Gotham City. And he said he's been badly treated by New York's political leaders. So is the rest of the country. And despite having paid millions of dollars in taxes, according to Mr. Trump. Now, Mr. Trump, who was born in New York, has increasingly spent more time at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, and the president has been at odds with the New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Now, they both welcomed the news that the president was Florida-bound, and Mr. de Blasio said, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out," or whatever. This is Mr. de Blasio, a man who won't even put out his real name. No, that's not his real name. His real name is Warren Wilhelm Jr. Oops. So he's the last person to be calling anyone fake. Mr. Wilhelm. Another descendant of the paperclip crew, no doubt. But what is not in doubt, he was a supporter and advocate for the revolutionary socialist Sandinista government in Nicaragua during the riots and subsequent slaughter in the 1980s. Yes, you, Mr. Wilhelm. Now, as for Mr. Cuomo, he challenged Mr. Trump's assertion that he had paid his taxes at all, and he added, "He's all yours, Florida." Now, Cuomo, born in New York, and this comment is indicative, in solidarity with Israel, Cuomo announced an executive order against the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And he also tweeted at the time, "If you boycott Israel, New York State will boycott you." Right there in their own words, telling you who runs that state. And in July of 2014, it was reported that the Moreland Commission, a committee established by Cuomo to root out corruption in politics, suddenly backfired and was directed away from investigations that could be politically damaging, it was said at the time. And Cuomo later abruptly and controversially disbanded the whole commission. You have to laugh. Or in 2006, Mr. Cuomo threw his own friend, who he described as like a brother, under the bus for financial criminality that implicated Cuomo, but as per usual, others take the rap, it seems, and his friend Picoco got jailed. So those two have no room to open their mouths as widely as they do. Back to China. Apparently, it is said, as Earth is apparently too small for China's economic ambitions, the country is considering developing commerce beyond our planet and wants to create an economic zone in cislunar space by 2050. Now, the new zone will cover areas of space near Earth and the Moon and in between, according to Bao Weiman, the head of Science and Technology Commission at China's Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, which was revealed last week. Now, the agency is the main contractor for the National Space Program and said the project could bring in around $10 trillion for China, it was reported, citing industry experts. Now, in the report on the development of Earth and Moon space, Bao said that the field had huge economic potential and thus the country should study reliable, low-cost aerospace transport systems between our planet and, quote, its satellite. Nice hint there, satellite. Now, the basic technology is said to be finished by 2030, while the key transport technology is expected to be created by 2040. Both of those dates are a complete and utter lie. And by the middle of the century, China could successfully establish the space economic zone, according to the official. Now, two things from this. China really needs to deal with the filth within their midst and needs to learn to provide the 5 basic essentials in life to all their people. Plus, they need to stop the organ harvesting machine operating within their borders before going anywhere near another space-based body. Now, should they try to land, they will face the same outcome as the Israeli and India probes. Boom. Satellite, meaning planet, not moon, that revolves about a larger one, first attested in 1660. But here's the kicker. Galileo, who had discovered them, the moons, called them Sidera Medici in honour of the Medici family, one of the 13 black nobility families. And it also meant, quote, man-made machinery orbiting the earth. Oops. RT, Max Keiser this week sat down with publisher David Morgan to discuss the turmoil in the repo markets. This pretty much validates everything we've been saying, which are already flashing red sirens, according to Max, and how banks that are desperate for cash may come to insolvency one by one. If these banks like JP Morgan or Deutsche Bank are unable to settle trades because they don't have the cash, then when the end of the quarter comes, they're going to have to, by law, if there is rule of law anymore, it's an open question, announce that they're insolvent. As it stands, by the end of this quarter, all banks will announce that they have no option. And therefore, they're going to set off a cascade, he said, and it will be the continuation of the 2008 crisis, but much, much worse. Keiser told his co-host Stacey Herbert as they delved into the exploding debt bomb that the Federal Reserve is trying to cover up in the repo market. And the rapidly increasing intervention in the repo markets indicates that there is obviously some insolvency in the system, and which was warned by Morgan, the publisher of the Morgan Report. And he explained that the banks are required to have a certain reserve of cash on hand, which they don't have. And if they don't, they have to borrow overnight to meet its requirement. Now, they may go to other banks to make their books square, but if other lenders turn them away, which is what's increasingly happening, because they don't have enough funds, they have to ask the Fed as a last resort. Because the Fed hasn't got any either. And he said that's kind of telling that in the banking system at large, no bank would loan to me because I don't trust a bank that needs the money. So it puts some caution into the system, Morgan said. So it's sort of the walk of shame to go to ask the Fed to borrow money when another bank or other banks won't loan to you. And he went on, given that this could happen multiple times, and because all the lenders are interconnected, as we have found out, the fall of one of the banks would cause a domino effect, like it happened when Austria Credit Anstalt Bank failed and initiated the Great Depression. And there you have it, as we have been saying on this show. And please don't be basing the narrative on faked stock markets. They are all illusion. None of it's backed by anything real. And all it is designed to pull in with promised profits when they have, and when they have enough of that profits, they crash it down and buy up all the lower price stocks. That's how it works. Vulture capitalists. Now, if the stock market was real, it would be based on how companies are really doing. And how can the value of a company go up if they are bankrupt? There is your proof of illusion right there.